I don't want to drown again. Mommy, the 3-year-old girl whispered, her eyes brimming with tears, her small hands trembling. No one in the room dared to say another word. It wasn't that her voice was loud, it was that it cut too deep. Emily was a little girl with soft, curly brown hair and wide, curious eyes. She was born in a peaceful town in the state of Oregon, where green hills rolled beyond the horizon. Small streams trickled through pine forests, and everyone knew each other by name. Her family was ordinary. Her mother was an art teacher, her father an electrical engineer, and her grandparents lived just a few blocks away. Emily grew up surrounded by love and warmth. But early on, there was one thing that baffled and deeply unsettled her parents: her absolute terror of water. This wasn't the typical childhood fear, like being scared of the dark or monsters under the bed. Emily's fear of water wasn't simply about disliking wet clothes or the coldness. It was a kind of silent panic. The moment she saw a faucet turned on, she would begin to tremble. When she was lifted into the bathtub, she would scream and thrash, as if being dragged into the depths of the ocean. Once, just by seeing a painting of the sea in her preschool classroom, Emily fainted. No one understood why. Then one early winter afternoon, while her mother, Maria, was preparing to bathe her as usual, Emily burst into tears. But this time, she didn't just cry. She said something clear, as if a memory had just returned to her. "I don't want to drown again. Mommy!" Maria froze. "Drown. Again," she repeated silently to herself, trying to grasp what her daughter had just said. Emily went on, her voice shaky. "The water pulled me away," I screamed. But no one heard. Then I couldn't breathe. And then it went dark. And then I was here. At that moment, Maria thought her daughter was just making things up. Maybe she had seen something in a cartoon or overheard a spooky story at preschool. But the fear in Emily's eyes didn't look like a child's imagination. It looked like something remembered, something deep. Her husband, Thomas, was more dismissive. She probably picked it up from some silly story. "Don't dwell on it," he said. But from that day on, Emily began to say strange things more often, with more detail, and each time left her parents increasingly uneasy and sleepless. One rainy night, when Emily was 4 years old, she ran into her parents' bedroom, her face soaked with tears. "I saw Elise get pulled away by the water again. I saw her screaming. The wind was so strong. She fell, and no one got there in time." Maria held her tightly, stroking her daughter's hair as she asked gently, "Who is Elise, sweetheart?" Emily didn't answer. But a week later, during a walk through the park with her mother, she pointed at a large lake in the center and said, "I died in a place like that. There was a white lighthouse. I was wearing a yellow swimsuit with white flowers. And Elise was my name back then." Maria felt like she had been struck by lightning, not because her daughter was talking about a past life, but because the details were so specific. A 4-year-old could not invent a white lighthouse and a flowered swimsuit on her own, not unless she had seen it or had been told. From that point on, Emily began sharing more. She described a wide beach with soft, white sand, a wooden pier stretching into the water, a dolphin statue near the entrance to the playground, a white woman in a blue-striped dress calling out to Elise, the sound of a huge wave crashing against rocks, and then nothing. Maria wrote it all down, every single detail. She didn't know why. Maybe it was instinct, a mother's intuition, or maybe it was the fear of forgetting something that might matter. One night, after Emily had fallen sound asleep, Maria quietly opened her laptop. She typed into the search bar, "Elise drowned Lighthouse Beach, USA, 1970s. Nothing came up? She changed the keywords, added little girl, added the year 1972 because Emily had once whispered, "I died in 1972. Hours passed. At 3. A faded local newspaper article from the Massachusetts archives appeared on the screen. 7-year-old girl named Elise Peterson went missing at Rockport Beach, suspected to have been swept away by waves. Body found 3 days later near the base of the lighthouse." Maria went cold. "Elise, 7 years old, 1972. A beach. A lighthouse." She scrolled down, heart pounding. A black and white photograph appeared. Elise smiled brightly, standing beside a dolphin statue. Maria stared at the screen. as if she were peering through a doorway between two worlds, one that her daughter had never visited, and one where, somehow, she had once died. The name, the age, the year, the place, and even the dolphin statue. All of it matched the disjointed details Emily had been murmuring for months. Maria reached out and touched the screen, her fingers gently brushing Elise's face in the photo. The bright eyes and curly hair looked just like Emily's. She woke Thomas. At first, he resisted. He had always believed stories like this were nonsense, products of imagination or psychological suggestion. But when he read the article, he fell silent. For the first time, the logical man had nothing to say. "I want to take her there," Maria said. "You think that'll help?" "I don't know, but if she really remembers, maybe going back will bring her peace. And if not, at least we'll know." The flight took 3 hours. The whole family arrived in Rockport on a spring morning, with the sky painted a clear blue and the ocean sparkling like floating crystals in the sunlight. Emily seemed fine throughout the trip. But the moment the taxi pulled up to the beach, where a small white lighthouse stood in the distance, she fell silent. "Here. I've been here," she whispered. No one said a word. Maria squeezed her daughter's hand tightly, noticing how cold her tiny palm was, cold like December seawater. They walked along the pier together. Emily moved slowly, as if every stone beneath her feet carried an echo from long ago. Then she stopped in front of the dolphin statue. It was still there. Only now its tail was chipped in one corner. Its tail was whole back then, Emily said, eyes fixed on the sculpture. Nearby, an old man sat at a small ice cream cart. He looked over with squinted eyes. Maria approached him. "Sir, have you been working here since the 70s? "I've been selling ice cream here for over 50 years, he replied. "Why do you ask?" Maria took out her phone and showed him the old newspaper photo of Elise. The man looked at it for a long moment. His face changed. "That girl. Yes. I remember. The waves were unusual that day. She had just dropped her ice cream in the sand and ran toward the water. Within seconds, she vanished. Police. Rescue teams, they all came, but no one got there in time." Emily stood behind them, silent, her eyes vacant. Then she murmured, "No one got there in time. I screamed, but the wind was too strong. No one heard me." The old man turned abruptly. "What did you just say?" Maria gripped her daughter's hand tightly, choosing not to answer. "Thank you, sir. We just wanted to pay our respects." The three of them walked toward a small cemetery behind the church, the same one mentioned in the old article as Elise's burial place. Maria didn't say a word to Emily. The girl had no idea where they were going. When they reached the cemetery gate, Emily let go of her mother's hand and began walking on her own. She turned down 3 narrow pathways, never once checking a map or reading a headstone. She simply walked, as if an invisible thread were pulling her forward. Then she stopped, in front of a moss-covered grave, slightly leaning to the left. No decorations, no flowers. Emily knelt down. "Here. This is where Elise is. I feel cold, but it doesn't hurt anymore." Maria burst into tears. Thomas placed a hand on her shoulder, lips tightly pressed together. The gravestone read, Elise H. Peterson, 1965, 1972. She loved the ocean. The ocean took her home. Emily sat down on the ground, pulling from her pocket a small stone she had picked up in Oregon. A strange habit she'd had for years, collecting round stones, washing them clean, and keeping them. She placed the stone gently on the grave. "This is my gift to Elise, so she won't be afraid anymore." No one said anything. The wind rustled through the trees behind them, making a soft whispering sound. A small flower drifted down from somewhere above, landing quietly on Emily's hair. She didn't notice. On the flight back, Emily slept the entire way. No nightmares, no tears, no waking in the middle of the night. And then a quiet miracle happened. In the weeks that followed, Emily began touching the faucet without panicking. She no longer screamed when Maria washed her hair. And then, one day, she sat in the bathtub, dipping her fingers into the water, and giggled. The water feels soft, like cotton candy. It's not scary anymore. Maria and Thomas looked at each other. They didn't say anything out loud, but in their eyes was a quiet relief. That summer, the house felt calmer. No more midnight screams. No more questions about a past life that kept her parents sitting up at the edge of the bed. Emily seemed to have placed a stone on top of her memories. Gently, peacefully, without panic. Maria still kept the notebook where she had written everything Emily ever said. Messy handwriting, sometimes shaky, sometimes rushed. She once thought about tearing it up, locking it away in a drawer. But instead, she placed it on a shelf. Between two Haruki Murakami novels she loved, books that also never fully explained anything, only touched the heart, and quietly walked away. Maybe some mysteries are meant to stay that way. Emily grew up like any other child. She started elementary school, did her homework, learned to swim with her friends, though she still kept her distance from the sea. When she turned 8, Maria gently asked her one evening, "Do you still remember Elise?" Emily paused for a moment. "I remember she was really scared of losing her toys when the waves came." "And do you still fear water?" Emily thought for a second. "I'm not afraid of water, but I remember the feeling freezing cold, like being pulled into a dark dream." Then she moved on, telling stories about a classmate who had dropped her pencil, about the egg sandwich she had for lunch, about the cat in her math textbook. Maria understood. The memory was fading, not because it hadn't been real, but because Emily's soul was healing. And healing often comes hand in hand with forgetting what once hurt. Thomas remained cautious. He didn't say much, but after the trip to Rockport, he no longer scoffed at the idea of reincarnation. Instead, he began reading more, books about past life memories, Carl Jung and the collective unconscious. One night at dinner, he quietly said, "Maybe human memory is like a river, not a lake. It flows, winding through generations. Through time, sometimes the water rises on a different shore." No one responded, but the words stayed. On Emily's 10th birthday, the family threw a small garden party. She invited a few close friends. There was a dolphin-shaped cake, sky blue balloons, and even Beatles music at Emily's request. Midway through the party, Emily ran into the house, then returned holding a small wooden box she usually kept hidden in her drawer. "I want to tell a story," she said. Everyone fell silent. Maria and Thomas exchanged a brief glance. Emily opened the box. Inside were stones, small, round, of every color: ash gray, golden brown, moss green. "These are the stones I've been collecting since I was 3, she explained. "From the park, near the sink, on the way home." "Why do you keep them?" another child asked. Emily looked off into the distance for a moment, then smiled. "Because I think someone in the past didn't get to keep the stones they loved, so I keep them for her." Maria couldn't hold back her tears. When Emily turned 12, the family had a chance to return to the Oregon coast. Not Rockport, but a small beach near the town where they lived. Thomas suggested they go for a picnic. To their surprise, Emily agreed. When they arrived, she took off her shoes and stepped onto the sand. The grains clung to her feet, making her shiver slightly, but she didn't pull away. Maria stood nearby, watching every step. Emily walked closer to the water. Just a few more steps and the tide would touch her toes. She stopped, stared out to the open sea, closed her eyes. A soft breeze swept across her face. Maria approached, asking gently, "Are you okay?" Emily opened her eyes. She smiled. "Mom, I don't think I'm Elise anymore." "Why not?" "Because Elise was a dream I had. But I'm Emily, and I'm awake now." No more words were needed. Maria gently squeezed her daughter's hand. The sea continued to roar, but within her, a wave had finally calmed. Now Emily is 16. She no longer speaks of Elise. No more nightmares, no more panic at the sound of running water. But in her room, there's still a small wooden box, filled with dozens of stones she's collected from all over, each one like a memory, a quiet note in the long melody of her life. Sometimes, when it rains, Emily steps out onto the porch, tilts her head back, and lets the raindrops fall into her open palm. She doesn't say anything. She simply smiles, not because she fears the water, not because she has forgotten Elise, but because in that moment, between the sound of rain and the softness of the wind, she knows each of us may have once been someone else. Every dream is a doorway, and sometimes all we really need is to be heard. You may believe in reincarnation, Or you may not. But some stories happen in ways no logic can explain, only felt through the quiet stillness of the heart. A little girl who once couldn't touch a faucet without shaking, now smiles under the gentle rain. A memory that once haunted has helped a fragile soul find her way home. And maybe, within each of us lives a part of someone we've never met. If this story touched something in you, if you've ever heard something strange and never forgot it, leave a comment. Or simply share this video with someone who needs a gentle light in their day. Because stories like this deserve to be heard, and there are many more stories like it. We'll keep telling them